Welcome to the Beyond the Bucket Show, a podcast centered around optimizing all lives' buckets. We all have buckets we are balancing: coaching, entrepreneurial ventures, family, passion projects, and health. Let's all take this journey together and become bucket fillers. And here's your host, Chris McSwain.
Welcome back. Every time I hear that intro, it just gets me excited for the next guest that we have on today. Today, we've got an NFL veteran and UT alum, as well as one of the big wide receivers that they have in the NFL. I would like to welcome none other than Collin Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Oh man, Chris, I appreciate you having me. It's definitely an honor. We go way back, Valley Christian, starting from, one of my day one. So I'm definitely honored to be on the show and kind of let you into a little bit of my life.
For sure. Well, you've got a really interesting life, and we want to touch on that. But before we start, what is a fun fact about you that most people that even know you wouldn't even know?
I've taken acting classes that I actually really enjoyed, and we do some interesting stuff in class that would be a little embarrassing if some of my friends or teammates saw me do.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're living in LA right now, I believe. Is that something that you want to do post-career?
No, not so much. For me, it was one of those things I just never dabbled in it or anything like that. So getting to know myself, I enjoy exploring new interests and new hobbies.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that I heard of. In fact, my mom, she did a few acting classes in her day and is in a few TV shows and movies. But so I was like, hey, might as well give it a shot. So it was a couple years ago. I signed up for an acting class and met some great people. And so, yeah, that's probably my interesting fact.
That's really cool. I mean, I wouldn't expect that from you. But I mean, stepping outside of your comfort zone is kind of what you've done your whole life, which is kind of put yourself in different situations. And we'll talk on what you're doing off the field as well, because I think that's really important. But I think anytime you can do something that is out of the norm, something that you're not really, sure about or comfortable with, I think is really a good thing. Fun fact about me, because you don't know this, but my first job was a tour guide at the Winchester Mystery House. I don't know if you went there when you were in San Jose, but
I steered clear of that. I heard, it's haunted. So anything haunted, I'm not for it. But that's awesome.
So I don't know if it was like really haunted, but you for sure get in your own head about it. But when you're training to work there, they let you go throughout the house like on the twilight hour, and you got to spend like about an hour and a half just grazing through the house. And it's a huge mansion, obviously, with 141 or 42 rooms throughout it. And so you can kind of freak yourself out. And I literally thought I heard somebody down the steps and was chasing me. And I started running back to the spot, and everybody's like, what's going on? Are you okay? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm okay. But you can kind of freak yourself out when it comes to that. And I was 16 years old, and I was given. That's why I've never really had a problem like public speaking, because I had to give tours from six to 86, or even older than that, or even younger than that. So it was, and I had to memorize this hour and 15-minute script. So it was a good first job to kind of push me out of my comfort zone, because I was kind of like a shy kid growing up.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. And I couldn't agree more in terms of exposing yourself to just different things that maybe in your normal day you wouldn't get involved in, but just trying stuff out, or taking that job when you're 16 or whatever it may be. And you learn a lot about yourself along the way. And now, you're a seasoned podcast host, a seasoned coach, a business owner. So, but yeah, that skill of public speaking and being a host, a lot of that, you never know, could have stemmed from being 16 and, leading those tours in the Winchester Mystery House. So that's very cool.
And truth be told, my mom is the one who made me get the job because she bought me a car, it was a 1982 BMW. It wasn't like a new one, but
Oh,
it
geez.
was.
I just heard BMW. Lucky you, man.
That's what
In
everybody
high
asks.
school?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Everybody asks you, what's your first car? I said BMW. I don't tell them it was 1982, and that was the year that I was born. So that car was 16. That was 16 years old when I got it. So yeah, but shout out to my mom for sure.
Shout out to your mom. That's awesome. Good for you.
Speaking of family, you have a pretty close knit family. Growing up in San Jose, and your dad was a professional football player as well, and your mom was an actress, and kind of in that lane, and you had a brother and a sister that you all ended up going to the same college. What was growing up like for you? And kind of tell me that story, maybe a 2 or 3 minute backstory on just you and how you got to where you got to.
Yeah, great question because I will never be here for, wasn't for me having an awesome support system in my family and my parents and having great siblings. So yeah, my dad, Johnnie Johnson, he played in the NFL for 10 years for the LA Rams. He's from LaGrange, Texas originally, but got drafted to the LA Rams and kind of settled down in California. So he met my
First
mom.
round pick, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, first round pick. I should know the number, but in the 20 somethings of the first round. So a huge honor in itself. It's a huge accomplishment. Me going through the draft process myself, I realize how big of a deal that is. So definitely shout out to him on that. And then he met my mom my mom was a cheerleader for the LA Rams, and that's kind of how they met. I don't mean to air out their business because I think that may be illegal, but hey, thank God they did it because I'm here.
Right.
So, but yeah, so that's how they met. And my mom is from the Bay Area, so we settled down here. And yeah, and my brother, his name's Kirk Johnson, older brother, a year and a half older than me. My sister's around a year and a half younger, Camille Johnson, and we all went to Valley Christian. Great school, super honored to have that opportunity. Met a lot of phenomenal people there, had a lot of phenomenal coaches. You actually coached my sister in basketball, which
Yeah.
is a full circle moment here. But yeah, so I'm just super, super blessed and thankful to have the parents I had. And I feel like they just instilled a lot of good qualities in me and all that stuff. So I'm just super grateful. But yeah, the journey led us to San Jose. It's where I grew up, and Valley Christian is a huge pillar of my childhood and my young adult life. So I'm super thankful for it.
Yeah, I think it's a great school and institution. My kids go there now, and I'm excited to see where their journey takes them. But just the Christian background and the fundamentals that the school instills in kids at such a young age is just really unmatched. And I think that you always want your kids to have their own passions and things like that, and for it to be cultivated at an institution like that. I just think it's a real blessing in being around people that are like-minded, and you're going to get a bunch of different walks of life. There's a bunch of different cultures that you're going to come in contact with in San Jose, in the Bay Area, and we're just very blessed to be in the space that we're at.
Absolutely. Super diverse community with numerous interests, in sports and everything Valley's doing in their conservatory department. I'm kind of been a little far removed from that, but it sounds like they're doing some cool research stuff and always, cool on the tech end and all the stuff they're doing in that space. But yeah, super diverse, which I loved. You meet a lot of people from different walks of life, different worldviews, and that's a huge part of just challenging yourself and growing. And that's always how I've been raised, in a team environment, playing football. You're with guys with a completely different walk of life and a completely different worldview. Some with two-parent households, some with no parents living, some with divorced parents, some with their grandma raised them, some everywhere in between. So, and you connecting and building relationships with those guys and pushing in the same direction, in the direction of the team, is just a huge kind of value that I have. So it's like, anytime, and that goes back to my acting class thing. It's like that was something completely foreign to me.
Yep.
And I was in there with kind of kids who grew up doing theater and all that stuff, maybe in their high school, when I was the guy who, obviously was involved in sports. So it was like a completely just different vibe than what I was used to. But I appreciate that now as I get older, and it definitely challenges you, and something I always appreciate the diverse backgrounds of people. So yeah, Valley was super cool with that.
For sure. I want to get into something a little bit nitty gritty. What was it like growing up in your household with three athletes and all of you were really, really high level athletes? Your sister went to University of Texas. Your brother went there. Same with you. And you guys all competed at a really high level. To get one child as a Division I athlete is pretty darn special, but to get three is incredible. So what was your childhood like? How was this athleticism cultivated? Obviously, you guys had good genes from your parents, but what was it like when you guys grew up? And then also Kirk being a little bit older and Camille being a little bit younger, you were kind of stuck there in the middle. What was the competition like between you guys? Because Kirk, quiet as kept, was like really one of those dudes growing up, and kind of the spotlight was always on him. Just from where I stood, and then you obviously were a very good athlete yourself, but then you have this younger sister kind of on your heels too. I want to know what those days were like. What was the backyard like? Because my kids are kind of in that same. My kids are almost exactly 2 years apart, so similar to you and your siblings.
Very similar. Yeah, that's a great question. I guess in its simplest version, it was just very competitive, but in a way where we always tried to support each other. And I think my dad incentivized that as well, because no matter the sport, football, track, you name it, when one of us won, it was kind of like we all won because we were a part of each other's team. But it was super competitive. I always wanted to beat my brother. My brother always wanted to beat me. My sister was a sneaky one. She would always sneak up and beat us in games around the house. Play Monopoly, she would beat us. Play Uno, she would beat us. So it's like one of those things, no matter what we do, sports or just like recreational games around the house, it was just competitive. And that was a natural environment for us. And that competitiveness still sticks with me to this day. Whatever I do, whatever my hands find themselves to do, I want to be the best at it. And I think that stems from kind of maybe the mindset of, my dad and my mom being competitive in what they did, being a professional athlete, and my dad accomplishing the stuff he did. And also my mom, like it's hard to be a professional cheerleader, a dancer, an actor, all that stuff. So that's a whole different conversation, but she has a competitive mindset as well. So the combination of the two led to that nature in myself, Camille, and Kirk. So yeah, it was great. We would compete in absolutely everything: Monopoly, video games, football. Camille would be out there playing football with us in the backyard. It was just fun. So yeah, but at the end of the day, we always try to support each other, through the competitiveness to this day. And that's just a big pillar. So
Yeah.
competitiveness, but also be a support system for each other. But
Now, who was
yeah.
who was the one that was always, if they did not win, like the day was just over, like so competitive to the point where their whole day was messed up? Because it had to
I
be
would
one of
say,
you.
yeah, I guess it wasn't like anyone crazy that's like no one significantly stood out for that particular characteristic, but my brother probably, because he's just such a freak of nature and so naturally gifted, and
Mm,
he was the older brother, so he had that mindset of like, I'm the leader, and like I will not let Colin beat me. I will not let Camille beat me in anything. So, and that was always kind of like my one of my motivational points is like, okay, like, I want to beat my older brother, right? So,
yeah.
um, yeah, I would say him, but I wouldn't be where I am even without him. Just being a supportive older brother was very, very hard on me growing up, and him and his friends would give me a hard time because I would always try to show that I'm cool and hang with the big dogs and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's absolutely all love. And but yeah, I personally, if I had to, it's probably between me and Camille. But I feel like I always kind of had a chip on my shoulder growing up because I never, people see a 6'6", 220-pound human now, but I was never that. Well,
Mm,
at least physically, I was not that for a long time, middle school, high school. but mentally, I was definitely not that for a long time.
Mm.
Because I would say I was just stuck in the mindset of, okay, I'm Johnnie Johnson's son. Whenever someone addressed me, it's like, oh, that's, Johnnie Johnson's son. Johnny played in the NFL 10 years, and that's his son. What's his name? Collin or whatever.
Mm.
Like, so, and then, oh, I was Kirk's younger brother, the tall, skinny guy who would run up trees and do backflips and do cartwheels and stuff behind the varsity games.
Yeah.
That was me. So I was kind of a nerdy, maybe a little bit awkward, but sneakily athletic kid. But I always had a chip on my shoulder, and I think that mindset is still instilled in me today, and why I've been able to grow not only in my professional football athletic career, but also just grow in different fields and avenues off the field as well. Because I will always have that chip on my shoulder. And again, it's absolutely nothing to like a knock on my dad or brother or sister. It's just one of those things that I internalized, and I just use it in my favor to give me a competitive advantage in anything I do. So, yeah.
No, I mean, that's just real life. I mean, those are real things. And, based on the dynamics of your family and try to live up to those expectations, quote unquote, whether that be imposed from the family or not. Because I felt like, your dad was a person that was kind of, he was strategic in the fact that, he'll motivate and stuff like that, but he kind of was hands off, even with,
You're saying you noticed that.
Even with coaching, he let me coach, and he wouldn't, being a high level athlete. Sometimes, I even coach my son's kids, and then the dads will come up to me and, oh, I played here, I played there, I played. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm here to coach your kids, and it doesn't matter what we did as when we were athletes. It really doesn't. It really is about that next generation. And so, I even think about that too. If your dad is a coach and he's been coaching for so long, what does that look like? Oh, that's, McSwain's kid or something like that. I want them to have their own identity, or, I don't want my daughter to be looking at my son and be like, oh, and it seems like everything. Oh, CJ this, CJ that. And then, almost the same initials as you.
Yeah.
But
I was like, me, CJ, or
no,
CJ?
my CJ. But I see my daughter, and because we just were driving literally this afternoon, and we rode by Lincoln High School. There was a track meet going on. I said, "Oh, look, it's track." I said, "You guys gonna run track?" Because they're pretty fast. And my daughter asked CJ first before, and he's like, "Well, why don't you answer Dad first?" And she said, "No, you answer." And so he said, "Yeah, I'm running track." She's like, "Yeah, me too." And then they kind of got into it. And so that question was probably just because I was thinking about that drive that we had, and what does that look like for a kid that's growing up, and you have maybe a quote unquote shadow, whether imposed or self-imposed. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
There's so many layers I want to touch on that, because that's definitely an interesting point you said, Chris. For me, I always appreciated my dad, because as decorated as he is in his career and athletic career and business career, he always was very hands off in terms. He coached the mind more so than the X's and O's, which I appreciated. So he was a life coach. And we definitely kind of felt the focus on mindset and perspective in athletics versus the X's and O's. A lot of coaches do the alternative, and they want to get on the court or the field with their kid and kind of micromanage the kid with the coach and figure everything out, and it could be a headache for the coach.
Yes, it can.
I'm sure. Yeah, it could be a headache. I'm sure you, or as a coach, or whoever listening who is a coach, could have had that experience in their coaching career. But I always appreciated my dad, because he left that up to the coaches and let them do their job that they're paid and trained to do. And my dad just coached up everything else upstairs, the brain. Just gave me great gems on perspective, great gems on what's within your control and what's not in your control. And if you just focus your energy on what is in your control, you're going to be so much better off You can't control the weather. You can't control if the coach likes you. You can't control if maybe you got hurt on a particular play off a fluke. You can't control certain things, but you could always control your attitude and your effort and the way you approach the game. So that's one thing he always pushed, which is awesome. And then secondly, I wanted to touch on what it was another comment. Let me think.
The brother sister.
Yeah, it was something about just when you had a conversation with CJ or your kids in the car talking about track and stuff. It's I feel like kids will, you can't push a certain narrative, or you may want them to play a certain sport, but at the end of the day, I feel, I don't have any kids, but it should be the kid's choice to a certain extent. So my thing was, my parents put me in everything. I've done karate, gymnastics, soccer, tennis, football, basketball. I felt like I've done everything at a young age to figure out my interests, and the only rule was, once I start, you're not a quitter, so you're going to finish, right?
Yeah.
But as I got older and developed and understood myself more as a human being, it was more so, okay, Collin, what do you enjoy? And that's when you kind of take the training wheels off, and you just let the kid just grow into himself, because it's so tough comparing yourself to other people around you. And I think that's comparison is the thief of joy.
100%.
And so, but at the same time, it's kind of normalized here in America. Everything is based on how we're performing in comparison to the other person. But I believe if you focus truly on becoming the best you can be, so for me, being the best Collin Johnson I can be, for you being the best Chris McSwain you could be, and you just focus on that and realize that you are uniquely made with a purpose and a skill set that no one else has, you have this mindset shift. And yeah, if I lose today, that doesn't mean I'm going to lose tomorrow in my sport. Or yeah, if I'm, 5 foot, or this is a crazy stat. I think I was 6'2", 150 pounds, or maybe 140 something pounds my freshman year of high school. That is insane. I could blow away in the wind. But just because I was that height then, physically and also maybe mentally with my mindset, that doesn't mean I'll be that forever. So I just continually focused on developing myself, my mindset, my skills, my physical ability, and eventually stop comparing myself to other people. And that's when I really felt myself blossom and grow into everything that I was called to be as an athlete and as a person.
Yeah. And what age were you when you actually felt that you were who you are? When you felt like, oh, okay, I'm really comfortable with who I am at this point in time. I'm not focused on any outside factors, whether it be my family or the next receiver or this next person. It didn't matter. I just felt really comfortable with who I am.
I think there's layers to that question. For me, the very first time I really felt myself grow in understanding who I was 7th grade, running track. And I remember doing hurdles, dealing with a few injuries. And I remember just journaling. I think it was like a Bible class, and we did journaling, just like, how do we feel? What are some prayers we want to send up to God, whatever it may be. And it just forced me to reflect on who I was, not Collin, Johnnie Johnson's son, or Collin, Kirk's brother. How do I feel? What do I want to get out of this track season, whatever? And I remember being in my blocks in 7th grade, and, the gun goes off, I take off, and I get first place in that race while dealing with, an injury at the time and all this stuff. And I just remember just kind of being enlightened, wow, that journey felt awesome. I overcame injury. I overcame just a lot of different things in my 7th grade mind. And I was like, that felt very cool. So that was, I think, the first step of my journey. So I continued that. I still journal to this day just to understand, my thoughts, my goals, my wants, my feelings, whatever it may be. I think that's a very important piece that more people should incorporate in their lives. So that's the very first time I experienced that. Secondly was at UT, as my dad is a college football Hall of Famer, a UT Hall of Famer, first round draft pick. Pretty much every accolade and title you can think of at UT, my dad had it. So me walking on the campus as a freshman, I feel like for most people that can be a little daunting task. But for me, I didn't really feel too much stress or pressure for whatever reason. And, I ended up having a great career at UT by the grace of God. I finished, I think, top 5 in UT history in receiving yards, which isn't, on my dad's level of everything he accomplished, but it proves that I kind of paved my own lane at UT. And so that was the second phase of it. And I realized that things are easy when things are going well in life. So yeah, I was pretty much starting every year. I was balling out. I was a projected, draft pick. Things are great. And another layer of this is in the NFL. I wasn't a first round pick like my dad. I was a 5th rounder, which is still a blessing, but nowhere near, my expectations of how competitive I am. And going from a starter and all that stuff in college and a household name to going to my role as a backup and playing special teams, like that took a huge hit to my ego. And at the end of the day, I really appreciate it because it gave me perspective and more introspection on digging deep on who Collin is outside of the football player. Like it's easy for me to be like, Collin is, X, Y, and Z, the person, the positive guy, the hard worker. Yeah, things have been going good in high school, college, things like that. But in the NFL, when my career wasn't going necessarily how I expected, to me, that's a true test of character. Yeah. So that's probably the final layer. And I think that really exposes who you are as a person when things are not going good. So I'm appreciative of every life experience, good or bad, whether I'm top 5 at UT and starting every year or been bouncing from team to team a bit in the NFL and predominantly a backup. Everything is feedback and everything is just learning more about yourself. And when you just embrace the journey of life and continue to improve each and every day, I think the growth mindset is undefeated. So I try not to get too high or too low. And I learn about myself in every phase of my life. So high school or middle school, 7th grade in that track event, to high school football, to college performing very well, and to my journey in the NFL going into year 6 in the NFL. It changes every year, changes pretty much every day. Life is going to throw challenges at you, and you figure out and learn about yourself each step of the way.
For sure. There are several things that you talked about that, I want to touch on. One, back when you were in 7th grade, you didn't really understand the resilience that you really needed to be able to get through that really difficult moment in time, but you were able to do it. And so you were able to channel something within you, and whether that be your faith, whether that be, other people helping you, whether it be that teacher that was kind of pushing you in this direction. It was a way for you to make a way when you didn't see a way, when you had injuries or when you had self-doubts or when you had just things that were going on that prevented you to compete at your highest level, but you finally got through that part. And I think, you've touched on 3 major moments, but you're going to have 500 major moments throughout your adulthood, and as you continue to play in the NFL and what you do after, and then when you have children and when you do all the things that this life has for you, there's going to be so many different challenges. And I mean, I just turned 40 a couple years ago, but I've found
28. What'd you say?
28. Yeah.
There you go.
But the thing that I've learned is you start to care so much more about other people. When you're younger, you don't really care. Yeah, you care about your immediate people, but there's a lot more people in your life too, and you start to care about all these other factors that are going on. And I just think it's interesting because all those moments. I'll think of this. In my hardest moment, the hardest thing that's ever happened to me was when my mom passed 2 years ago. And Taff is one of my best friends, and Taff.
Sure.
But his dad was sick, and he would call me and stuff like that. And then finally his dad passed away 2 weeks, or I don't know if it was 2 weeks or maybe like a month or whatever, right after, I did my mom's eulogy, and he had to do his 2 weeks after. So he came to mine, and I got up there on that stage as hard as it was. And I probably gave the best talk I've ever given, because I put so much time and consideration into it. I didn't need any notes. I just did it off the top of my head, but I had gone through it in my head over and over and over. What was I going to say? How was I going to cherish this moment? What was this moment going to mean to her, for all the people that were in her life that were going to be able to hear this? And if you didn't know her and you only knew me, now you know her because of what I am going to project on this church and give this, eulogy, also, sermon or whatever you want to call it, or a motivational speech, because I was coach up there. I was telling these people that it was going to be all right. I'm going to be all right, and I'm going to fight through these tears. And then he comes over, and we have our little celebration. But he came over because he didn't want to hang out, with everybody after, but he came over right after, and it was just me and him, and we kind of had this moment. I've never told this story before, but I just felt like compelled to be able to tell you this now. He said, "Dude, how'd you do that?" And the answer that I gave him, I said, "You just do." And then, 2 weeks after that, he doesn't cry ever, and he's gonna be upset that I'd say this, but he couldn't really get everything he wanted to get out during his dad's thing until his son comes up and just kind of wraps around him, because for Taft, that was his best friend, and his best friend is his son. And so he was able to get through that moment because of that. But because I was able to get through this hard, difficult moment, I felt like that moment helped him be able to get through that, and his son helped him get through that. And I just think that that's what it takes in life, is just, it takes you down these different roads where you don't know where you're actually going. You don't know how you're going to get through it, but you just do. And when you were speaking about all those things, all the ups and downs and the things of trying to reach your goals, we're all the same. We all have blood, and we're all human beings, and we all hurt. And different things may hurt us. You might be 6'6", I might be 6 feet, but we all hurt the same in certain capacities. And how you get through that is what really defines you in those really difficult moments. And so I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing some of those things with us. And that's why I felt like, hey, I want to share this with you, because if there's anybody that's listening out there, you only have gone through the worst thing that you've ever gone through. And everybody doesn't really know what that actually means. But when we talk as men and we share these things, that how we grew, I mean, the 7th grade story is really inspiring to me. And if you're going through a trial, and he was in 7th grade, and he was going through all this stuff, and then he was, projected a high pick, and then he had some injuries and things like that. Like that's why I do this. And honestly, it is to give back, but it's also a selfish thing, because I'm getting the best of Collin Johnson right now. I'm getting the best of you, and you get the best of me. And that's why I think that's why I really enjoy all this. I say all that to say, what were some of the more difficult moments in your life and in your career? You suffered a lot of injuries and things like that. What was it like coming back from those things where you climb up the mountain and you feel like you just get shot down a little bit, and you just climb back up? And what keeps you going after all the things that you've gone through, trying to chase this career in the NFL?
Wow, there are so many gems that you just dropped that I want to touch on. And first off, I appreciate you feeling comfortable enough to open up and be authentic and share your experience with your mom and TAF and things like that. First, I want to touch on how important I found community is in all aspects of life. Just how you felt supported when you had TAF there, and TAF felt supported when his son was there and gave him a hug. And that's the human experience, because I don't care how much money you have, if you're at, the top of the top or the bottom of the bottom. At the end of the day, we all are humans dealing with these human experiences.
Yes.
And one of my favorite verses in the Bible is iron sharpens iron, like one man sharpens another. So it's like when you're there, vulnerable, authentic with people that you trust and that have similar values to you and are going to push you to be the best you can be, the sky's the absolute limit. So you know, you don't need to have all the answers figured out in the moment, but if you have the right people in your corner, somehow you feel unstoppable. And I realize that, and that's something I really resonate with. And I want everyone to know that the importance of community is huge, and you could accomplish anything when you just have a couple people in your corner, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to touch on. Second is kind of, you asked about what are some of the toughest things I faced in my career,
Yep.
and there's a lot, but at the top of the list, I would say tearing my Achilles in
Mm.
2022. The reason why I say that is I mentioned some of my pain points in my journey climbing to the top, from performing very well in college to getting to, you know, the NFL, fifth round pick, not quite as high as I would like, but I'm super blessed. I got in with an opportunity to play and grow in my role. So, you know, after having a good rookie season, a couple touchdowns, few hundred yards, a good second season, you know, and then going into my third year, this is a big year. So throughout training camp, I was probably one of the last receivers on the depth chart. Throughout training camp and preseason, I climbed my way up to starting in the preseason, performing well. I think I was probably on track, if I kept my preseason average, to have 1,000 yards that year, which is incredible. And right before the third, I earned a starting role
And
this
this
year,
is in
which is huge.
Jacksonville or New
No,
York?
this is in New York in 2022, for the New York Giants. So I get my opportunity to start. I started the first two preseason games. There's three preseason games for those people who aren't as familiar in the NFL. So I'm going the week of the last preseason game before the regular season kicks off, and Collin Johnson is a New York Giant, you know, starting receiver. And in practice, I forget which day, but the week before that last preseason game, I went in motion. I just planted my right foot back, and my Achilles just like snapped. And
Mm.
I'm sorry if that's too graphic, but that's exactly how it went down. And it was absolutely just devastating for me for so many reasons. You know, you work so hard to get to that moment. I worked probably 20 years of my life to get an opportunity to um, potentially have a starting role in the NFL for a, you know, a storied franchise like the New York Giants, and it was just taken from me like that.
Mm.
And I remember getting carted off the practice field, going to the locker room, and it was just me, and I just started, to be transparent, just crying because I didn't fully understand. But this is a testament to my faith. For whatever reason, um, I got on a knee on right in front of my locker, and I just started praying to God. And the first words that came out of my mouth is, "God, I don't understand why you're doing this, but I thank you in advance because I trust you, and you got me this far, and you didn't bring me this far to leave me." So if you could imagine, I talked about hard times exposing who you are as a person. In that moment, during the uncertainty, I was so proud of myself looking back at it, when those are the first words that came out of my mouth, when I was confused, frustrated, you know, very angry. And I still had the spiritual maturity to have that type of conversation with God, you know, with my relationship with Him. So um, I didn't understand really why I said that, but I did. And looking back at it, um, you know, I'm still playing in the NFL, so I came back from that Achilles injury. I'm going on to year 6, which is a absolute blessing. After tearing that in year 3, the average career is 3 years, so I've doubled that right now,
Yep.
and I'm still going strong by the grace of God. And I love this story. If you haven't heard of it, it's about the story of the Chinese farmer, and it's just about perspective. And it's essentially, once upon a time in this village, there was a Chinese farmer who had a beautiful black stallion horse. And one day that horse ran away, and all of the neighbors in this village said, "Oh my goodness, that's so unfortunate. Like your amazing horse just ran away." And the farmer was like, "Maybe." The next day, that horse came back with 3 other beautiful black stallions that it brought back to the village. So now they had a total of 4 black stallions in the village, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh!" All the neighbors were like, "You're so lucky. Now you have 4 total horses." And the farmer said, "Maybe." So one day he was breaking in the horse. So he was riding one of the new horses to break it in, and fell off and broke his leg.
Mm.
And all the neighbors in the village were like, "Oh my gosh, farmer! Like, you're so unlucky. You just broke your leg." The following day, the military came to come recruit all the guys, the able men in the village, to recruit to serve in the war. And they recruited all of his friends and neighbors, but for him, he had to stay back because he had a broken leg, so he didn't have to go serve in the war. All of his neighbors were like, "You're so lucky you don't have to serve in the war." He said, "Maybe." So for me, the point of that story is you never know if something is truly good or bad until you let it play out. So you cannot define one particular situation or incident in your life in itself. Like, life needs to play itself out for you to get a real feel and understand any situation. So in the moment, you don't have full context. So
No.
I love that story. That gives me so much perspective for anyone listening to this, and that helps me focus on just we do not know the alternative in certain situations. Like, if
No.
I was healthy that year, I don't know what could have happened. I could have signed a big contract, lost myself, lost all the people that were close to me. I could have, who knows? But in your head, you never want to play. It's a dangerous path to always play the alternative on stuff you look back in the past and regret. So
100%.
the story of the Chinese farmer, just when a situation happens, good or bad, you don't know if it's good luck, bad luck, or indifferent. You just have to let it play out and just appreciate life and the experiences you have in that moment in itself. So that's me. I'm getting off my
No,
my
that's
preaching tangent.
that's a great story, and I'm gonna give you credit the first time I use it, and then I'm stealing it, Colin.
Yeah, please do. The
But
more people that hear that, the better. It's all you.
but the thing that I got, from all that was you can't question God, and we're both believers, but even in that, and I'll tell, this is one of the this is why I will never ever question God anymore. So J.R. Adams used to play receiver at Valley Christian, right? He's got so in the football office is where my office is at now. They're redoing it, by the way, this summer, so it's going to be all
They're
brand.
always redoing something.
They
It
are.
seems like always upgrading. I like it.
So I sit there and I see his memorial picture every single day when I walk in there or walk out. You can't miss it. And I was in Vegas for a basketball tournament when my wife was on the way to me. She said, "I can't get a hold of your mom because she was going to babysit the kids." And I was like, "No, it's good. She's probably didn't have her phone. Just come on." So I called the complex where she lived. And I told them to go in, and the guy said, "I can't do that." I said, "I'm giving you authority to go ahead and go. She's supposed to watch my kids. My wife's on the way to me." And he was like, "Okay, I'll go in." So he said, I knocked on the door and I went in, and I think she's sleeping. And I'm just like, no, that doesn't really add up for me. Like, what's going on? And so he's like, "Well, the police are coming." As soon as he said that, I was just like, oh no, like, what's going on? So the officer gets on the phone and, they start going over the jargon and what's your mom's name? And I said, "Just tell me what's going on. Like, I need to know." And so finally he tells me, yeah, she's passed away and in her sleep. So I'm in a hotel room by myself. Because I was getting ready to go get her at the airport. And so I'm just losing it. And so I call my buddy Ricky and I said, "Hey man, I need you up here." And he's like, "All right, whatever you need." He was downstairs getting food. And I said, "No, you need to come now." So he dropped everything and he came there. And so he's like, "What's going on?" And I kind of got it out, but I'm just losing it. So I start like packing and just trying to get busy because that's kind of what I've done when things are hectic for me. I just try to get busy to try to not surround myself with the thoughts that are going on. I had to call a couple people. And then my brother was out there, so he was on his way to come get me to take me to the airport so we can go back. And before we do that, got my luggage, and we're going down to the hotel elevator. I see Casey Adams, JR's dad. And he said, "Coach, how are you?" And I put some sunglasses on at that point in time because I didn't want anybody to see me like that. He's like, Coach, what's going on? How are you? And I said, not very good. And he kind of embraced me and gave me a hug. He said, what's going on? I said, well, my mom just passed away. And he was like, and I was trying to get away from him. I just really wanted to get away from him. But he held me. And at that time, I kind of like looked up and I seen his wife, JR's mom. And she's looking at me. And he just grabs me and he says, it's going to be okay. And I looked at her and I said, oh my gosh. And then I'm getting goosebumps now just talking about it. And I was just like, wow. I don't know what this is, but it gave me some, respite in that time of need. And it was just like one of the craziest things because I see this kid picture, and what I got from it was, all right, I lost my mom. She was 70 years old. They lost a child who was 18 years old. I don't know what I would do if I lost a child, and to see them still there, able to still live their life was one of those things where it's like, it's going to be okay. And the ironic thing is JR's number is the same number that I wore in high school and college. And I just, you can't make that up. And so, again, I got goosebumps just talking about it, but from that day on, and even before that, I never really tried to question God. But after that, there's no questions that I have anymore. Like, I can't question whatever happens in this life. It's going to happen. And then, the other realization is, like, after all that stuff happens and life continues to go on, after the memorial and all that, and this whole thing that's impacting your life, like, everybody continues to move on, and you have to too. You don't ever want to, lose that part of you. And I think about her every day, but you have to keep moving. You have to, because what else? Life is going to continue to go on. There's going to be another day. If it's rainy today, it could be sunny tomorrow. It could be snowing the next day. It could be, a blizzard after that. And you don't know. So you have to keep on moving. So I know we got off on a tangent, but I just felt like it was important to say that because, my faith has never been stronger, even in the hardest moments. And the same thing goes for you. Like, in your hardest moment as an athlete, get on the precipice of really jumping this thing off, you got on your knees and you prayed, and you didn't understand why it was happening to you, but you still thanked him for it happening. And you didn't know what was to come of it, but that'll kind of be the next thing that we talk about. But I don't even know where I was going, but
no, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. And I have a very similar perspective, like in that moment with, Adam's mom and dad in the elevator or in Vegas. Just, I don't think that's coincidence, and you don't either. And some people may have that worldview and mindset, but I refuse to have it. And I've seen so many events like that happen in my life, and again, that's a huge part of what strengthens my relationship with God. So you definitely resonate with you on that one.
Yeah. So I guess that's a good segue to the next phase, but you're still in a phase, as a free agent right now, playing in the NFL. But you've also done some things off the field that have you like really excited about, and for most of the time when you do interviews, people always talk about your athletic success and things like that, but they don't really want to talk about some of the intellectual things and other things that you have going on. And that's one of the reasons why I asked those questions in the beginning, is to, like, what else are you interested in? And find out that you've done acting classes just to step outside of your comfort zone, but talked about beyond sports, which is something that you are really passionate about and something that I think is really cool, especially for athletes that may not know what that next step is going to be. And every one of them are going to be taking it at some point. And like you said, the NFL really stands for not for long. So you've already doubled the time of the length of a career. So talk about, beyond sports and what that actually means.
For sure. Yeah, super excited about it. It's been on my mind for a while, but officially started the company in January of this year. Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. At the end of the day, whether you make the NFL, the NBA, whatever top of the top league, or you're done playing in high school, everyone's athletic career comes to an end. And what does that look like? And the challenges that come with that are very significant. I've found in people in my circle and former teammates and stuff like that. So I want to help provide support in that aspect. So what Beyond Sports is, it's a comprehensive athlete development platform. So it's a one-stop shop for athletes' needs for the transitioning to after their sport. And what that looks like is academic support, so tutoring if they want to get into a top-notch institution or university to continue their education. And also what that looks like is tutoring for certification exams, because it dawned on me one day that essentially every profession has some sort of barrier to entry, it seems like, with a certification or licensing exam. You want to be a real estate agent, you got to pass a test. You want to be a lawyer, you got to pass the bar test. You want to be a teacher, there's a test. You want to be a sport agent, a test. You want to be, and you could just keep going down the line of different tests and certifications that you have to pass. But what do you do when you have no idea, one, on what you're interested in, and two, where do you even start to look for that certification?
Yep.
Or how does that even begin? So what I wanted to do was create the one-stop shop for athletes to go to at whatever phase they're in, post high school, post college, or post professional playing days, that they can go to, have the support they need, and create a streamlined, measurable, quantitative process to quantify success. And that's helping them pass certification exams, placing them particularly into a jobs with interests and skills that fit them. And I feel like the potential for athletes are limitless, because I know the discipline, work ethic, and mindset that these guys and girls have, that I've
Right.
been around. So that's essentially what I want to do, and I've been building, and I'm super excited about it. And any way I could, provide support to you and your athletes at Valley or, Top Flight, Elite, I'm more than happy to be a resource. We do free 30-minute consultations with everyone, so they can go to beyond-sports.com and click get started, and be a free consultation. And we can just essentially, if you just need someone to talk out your next steps, we can do that. If you need help with test prep tutoring, ACT, SAT, to help you get into top colleges. I know it's optional now at most places, but at the end of the day, if you get a great test score, you could increase scholarship significantly. So that's another hidden kind of trick that you can do there. But there's just so many ways and perspectives to help. And what I'm doing is building a one-stop shop for all athletes' needs. So.
Yeah, I think it's great, and you're actually a client of your own self. You're a client. You're doing it right now.
Yeah,
So you're
which I love, which I love. So I'm like, I'm getting real firsthand, real life experience from my own situation, all the
Mhm.
wisdom that I built up since I was a kid, all my journaling, all being intentional, all the conversations I've had with people, all the awesome people I met within my network, all the athletes at the highest level that I've been in contact with, my role in the NFLPA, which is the NFL's union, just everything like that. I've been creating that, taking the feedback and information, and creating the best system I can on Beyond Sports. So
Yep.
it's super cool.
And then, so what was your involvement with the NFLPA? I think you recently either did a presentation or a talk or something like that that I seen, and I think you were telling me about it.
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, the NFLPA I mentioned is our union, which is in control of the collective bargaining agreement between the players and all the 32 owners of the 32 NFL teams on compensation, working conditions, environment, stuff like that. So that's essentially what the NFLPA does. They govern that, and they're the NFL Players Union. My role within that union, I got voted a player rep, so I'm on the board of player reps. All 32 teams get 4 player reps in their locker room. I was voted one for the Chicago Bears last year. So essentially what that is serving as a liaison between the Chicago Bears locker room and the NFLPA. So getting guys information they need in the locker room, understanding their benefits that they may not be aware of, any issues that's going on in the locker room, we can report to the PA, and pretty much anything that comes to mind, just being an asset and to support them. But so I got voted that, so I'm on the board of player reps there. And I also serve on the card committee, which is, the certification of agents and regulatory and disciplinary action. So I basically oversee all 1,000 NFL agents. So because all NFL agents have to be certified through the NFLPA. So those are two of my more formal roles. But at the end of the day, I just love being an advocate for players' needs and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
What are some of the things that people don't really know about NFL players? And we're not talking about the ones that they always speak about, the five guys that they're always talking about, whether it be
Oh my
Aaron
goodness. I hate
Rodgers
to cut you off, but that's how excited I am about this question.
yeah.
I love this stuff. Go ahead. Did you finish? Or?
No, you just jump on. I mean, yeah, just talk about.
Yeah.
I want to know the real stuff behind the scenes, because they only speak about really a dozen or so athletes, but there's a lot.
That is such
more.
a great question.
Yeah.
So essentially what I did is, you can call me a nerd or whatever, but last offseason I read the entire collective bargaining agreement, or the CBA, which is between the NFL and like the 32 owners, the NFL teams, and the players, governing everything you could think of from A to Z, to pay, to working compensation, to like everything you could think of is embodied within that document. So I read it from A to Z. It's a lot of legal kind of jargon, so I didn't understand everything, but I took notes on what I did understand, asked questions to people who maybe knew answers that I didn't know, and I'm a student of life and enjoy learning, and wanted to understand my rights and share that with my teammates. So I read that, and there is a lot of stuff jam-packed in there. I guess from the average listener to this, what they would get the most out of it is, so the NFL, the compensation is not guaranteed. So it has to specify that a portion of their contract is guaranteed in their contract, which is fairly rare in the NFL. So whatever you see on Google, because all of our salaries are public knowledge, that is what they would get if they play in every single regular season game. So we get paid when we're healthy, active, and you see us on TV playing in that game. If we don't play in the game or we're hurt, we essentially don't get paid. So, yeah, and you get paid every time you play. You get paid 1/18 of the salary you see that they're signed for that particular year, because there's 17 games in a bye week. So if I play a game, I'll get paid 1/18 of $1 million, and play another game, an additional 1/18, and another game, an additional 1/18. So it goes to show just the stress that can come with that, because when you're in practice or your hamstring's a little tight one day, you're like, I have to play. And it's not just because I enjoy it at this point. It's a career and it's a job, and it's my this is how we feed our family. This is how we take care of our life. So it's like, that's one thing I don't think people fully understand, is that it's not guaranteed. You have to play, you have to be healthy, and you only get paid 1/18 of your salary when you play. So best case scenario, you play all 17 games, including the bye week, 18 weeks, and you get paid your full salary. But if that's not the case, then you don't get paid the full salary. So it's pretty interesting. And you also get taxed in every state that you play in. So if I play in California, hometown team is Chicago Bears right now. That's where I play. But if I play in California, I pay California state tax, an additional jock tax that they add in addition to that. And if I play in Texas, I get lucky. There's no state taxes there. But if I play in whatever state, so you have to, most guys hire a CPA so they could go through and get the accounting and tax stuff under control. But it's very interesting how you get taxed in every state you play as well.
And are the main faces of the NFL, those are the only guys that are getting guaranteed contracts for a portion of it?
Yeah, so a lot of those guys do have a portion of guaranteed money. And usually you could see that on ESPN, the breaking news, whatever. They signed a deal, that's 200 million with 100 guaranteed. That guaranteed, if it's fully guaranteed, it's fully guaranteed. They have a great agent, and they're fortunate they get that. But if it says guaranteed, there's still some loopholes teams can get around that to not to pay that. So that's one thing. Secondly, is everyone sees these big contracts on TV and they think every NFL player is living that way. The meat of an NFL team, there's 53 players. I would say 90% of the locker room is on rookie contracts or vet minimum deals, which teams are going to pay you the absolute bare minimum that they can pay you. And the other 10% of the locker room, maybe even less, maybe 5%, those are the ones with the big deals, the franchise quarterback, the all pro edge rusher, the Pro Bowl receiver. Like those guys are in a different category. So a big issue we have in the NFLPA right now, or that a problem we're trying to solve, is everyone talks about all players. Let's increase the salary cap. More salary cap means more players, the more money players will get paid. But what increasing the salary cap actually does is you make the rich richer, and the middle class NFL player or the lower end tier NFL players, they don't see any difference in that increase of salary cap, because all the money goes to is who's our franchise quarterback, let's pay him more, who's our all-star receiver, our all-pro linebacker, our edge rusher. But the meat in the middle class of the locker room are not actually benefiting from the salary cap increasing. So we're trying to figure out a solution for solving that problem within the NFLPA now. And one of the solutions we've kind of are talking about most is player performance. So each time, this is a really cool benefit that not a lot of people know, but each time a player steps foot on the field, they get a player performance benefit, which is an allocated amount of money for every snap that they play. So it's not a crazy amount, but it's something to make the meat of the locker room and the 90% of the middle class NFL guys have a little additional compensation at the end of the year after they play significant snaps. So if we increase that player performance amount, we could essentially put money in the pockets of the 90% or the middle class of the NFL, so they could walk away from the NFL with significantly more money than maybe the average earnings are for the middle class of the NFL now. Because at the end of the day, let's say I said the average career is three years in the NFL. So if you, no matter how it is, if you get drafted in the late rounds, undrafted, whatever, you probably walk away with, if you played every game, I mentioned you get paid when you play the game. If you played every game, your 4-year contract, you could walk away with like $4 million on paper. But again, half of that's gone because of taxes. 3% of that from the top number is gone to your agent fees. You have a certain lifestyle people feel like they need to uphold, and it's not even malicious, but you have to travel a lot. You have to pay for training. You have to pay for physical therapy. You cannot write that stuff off anymore. You used to be able to pre-2017, but now you can't write that stuff off. So essentially, it's like the average NFL player is walking away, maybe if they're lucky, played 3 years, played every game with $4 million on paper, maybe $1 million in the bank, maybe, after all their expenses. And so everyone's like, oh, you're set for life. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to work again. That's a huge head start, but that is nowhere near the numbers you see on TV. And, that's the reality of the NFL.
Wow. We could do a whole podcast just on that alone, but for somebody to read the CBA from cover to cover, that's pretty amazing. I mean, you should be the president, honestly. Who's the president right now?
Jalen Reeves. He's a great player, great guy. I met him at the board meeting in Maui, which, awesome place to have the NFLPA board meeting.
Is he up to date as much as you are on all this stuff?
Maybe a little less nerdy than I am, but he's a great leader and an awesome guy. So the PA is definitely lucky to have him. But if ever my turn comes up in there, I'll that'll definitely be a role I'm, could be very passionate about helping.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You talk about that lifestyle, and most of the time when people, that's why people are playing in college till they're 27 now. CJ.
Right.
Like,
They're getting
because
paid a lot of money to play, so it's like, why not take advantage of that now? Yeah.
because at that point the NIL is guaranteed, or most of the time. Well, I've heard some stories about some of these collectives, and you
Oh
know,
man.
like they're giving these kids, $20K in gift cards, just like just a Visa card. Boom, here you go. And then, you're going to get the next one at this point. I don't know what you've heard, but I've heard some of my college coaching friends talk about that's kind of how it's going. Literally just heard that the sixth man for a Big 12 team is going for 1.5 million, just like it averaged 6 points this year. But the sixth man on a Big 12 team, getting ready to transfer, is worth 1.5, and he walked away from 700,000 to go play at another school. Like, yeah, I just got this. I got 1.5 from this school. I'm out, coach. Like, what? It's insane. But what's your quick take on the NIL?
I think it's a huge topic.
You want to go back to college now?
Man, I tell you what,
it was just starting.
I would have made a pretty penny at UT if they had it when I was there.
It started when
Chinese farmer.
Left,
it's all good.
It started when
it
you
started.
left, right?
It started when I left, a few years after I left,
man.
so I didn't get to benefit from anything. And I created a YouTube channel, probably had over like 20,000 subscribers, like probably over 1 million views, but I would do it out of the kindness of my heart, just because I enjoyed it, because I wasn't allowed to get paid when I was there. But thinking back now, it's like, dang, I could have capitalized off not only my play on the field, but off the field and all this stuff. But, it's all good. The story of the Chinese farmer, literally, I don't know the alternative, but I know I'm going on year 6 in the NFL, and I thank God for that. Right. It's all perspective. So, but NIL, I think they need to definitely regulate it at some point, because I mentioned the salary cap in the NFL. Technically, in NIL, they don't have that. So it's like, the richer the school is, the better players they can get, which is kind of, obviously an unfair advantage, and just very interesting kind of infrastructure and dynamic they have there. Secondly, I've heard so many horror stories of players getting paid and not having enough money at the end of the year to pay their taxes, because a lot of these kids don't come from financial literate backgrounds or whatever. They don't know. They touch the most money in their family lineage just within 1 year when they get to college. So and they also get paid 1099 money, which is an independent contractor. So they pay your amount in full, and you're required to have the discipline to withhold the taxes and pay
50%.
Yeah, 50% or whatever tax bracket they fall in, as opposed to W-2 income, which is NFL income. The taxes are withheld by your employer. Right. So we're fortunate, whatever we get, for the most part, if they withheld the right amount, that's about how much should be in our pocket. So we don't owe a huge tax bill at the end of the year. But imagine getting $1 million up front and no one telling you, hey, you're going to owe $500,000 to the IRS at the end of the year. So you could spend that quickly, and yeah, they need more guidance for sure, those guys.
Man, I'll get you out of here on this question, but we can do a whole podcast on this, and we might have to have you come back just because we had a really stimulating conversation. But top 5 big wide receivers, 6'3" and above. My son wanted me to ask you that one.
Really interesting.
6'3" and above. 6'3" and above.
Like, it could be time.
It could be all time. Yeah. So I can give you. I don't want to give you mine. I want to see yours. But my number one 6'3" or above has got to be Randy Moss. He's got to be on there. I'll take Megatron too. He's your size. I'm gonna take T.O. as well, because you can't. I mean, just what he did, and I mean, he's still in great shape. He could probably go out there and play.
He could probably still play today. Yeah, it's nuts.
So I would take those three. I will take I'll take a sleeper. And he was a really good player. I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but Jordy Nelson, quiet as kept, 6'4", ran a 4.4, really good, and especially with Aaron Rodgers. And my last one, Devontae's only 6'2", isn't he?
Yeah, I don't think he's above 6'3".
Okay, who else is 6'3", 6'3" or above? I'm missing somebody that's good. I know. I didn't really think about it before I asked the question, but we'll just go.
My favorite.
Those are my route Rushmore then. Mike Evans. I got to get Mike Evans
you.
on there.
Say,
I got to have Mike Evans on there.
Game.
Yes,
he has the most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Will tie
what am I thinking?
Now.
I don't even know why I put Jordy in there, but I was just like trying to pull something.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, who are your top 5 big receivers?
That's a good list you have there. Jordy's kind of.
I
respect his game, but I respect the uniqueness of your answers.
Yes.
No, I gotta earn that.
Hey, but over a 3-year span, though, Jordy was cold, and you can he was like a 3.
he was.
You could probably put his 3-year stats up there with anybody.
Yeah, best all time though. Yeah, but okay, yeah. For me, I would say number 1, super biased, but it's okay. Being biased is a part of sports. Is Calvin Johnson. I just loved how dominant he was. He had a shorter career than a lot of the other guys we're talking about, but
10 years, right?
I think maybe 9 or he just had more. He had more meat on the bone, and he retired. And I'm still sick of it because I wanted to continue to watch him play. Maybe 10 years, but yeah, Calvin Johnson, Randy Moss, Mike Evans, T.O. And how big is Andre Johnson? I don't know if he's over 6'3", but he may be like 6'3".
I think he's 6'2". He might be 6'2". I don't know.
You're nitpicking now?
I'm nitpicking now. Well, Devontae's not that. I think Andre's 6'2".
I hear you.
That's why I was hard to find that. Just so you didn't want to say Jordy Nelson. That's why.
Yeah. Who's over 6'3" that I like that? I don't know. I'll just go with Andre Johnson. He's probably 6'2", but that would be my 5th.
All right, 6'2.5". We'll give him
6'2.5" list. Right.
Last question. Who should be on the show? But you have to be able to help me get them on here. So that's how I get all my guests, Collin. I just ask people that come on the show. Yes, it's all about referrals.
Very cool. So you're asking me?
Yeah, who should be on the show? But you gotta help me get him on here.
Oh man. I love just the Valley Christian community or the Bay Area community. So I'm trying to think of someone who is involved in that. And your niche is typically basketball, huh? How many football players have you had on here?
How many football players? I've had I've had football coaches. I've had a lot of football coaches on here. I've had some WNBA and NBA players. How many football players have I had on there? It's mostly been football coaches, actually.
Do you know who I think would be a very, very deep, meaningful conversation is Colin Maher.
Okay. Yeah. He's over at Kings Academy?
No, he was the receiver coach at Valley for a while. I think he just recently walked away the last few years.
But is he now at Kings Academy coaching?
No, he's not.
Oh, he's done. Okay.
He's not coaching as of now, but he was my receiver coach at Valley Christian.
Okay.
He coached Jerrion Dickey, 5-star receiver, went to Oregon. Mm-hmm. He coached like a handful of like really, like talented receivers, but more importantly, kind of like him crafting our mindset was huge, and he's like one of my mentors to this day. He lives in the Bay Area, so it's like, and he's definitely meaningful and intentional in his conversation. So I think that could definitely be a very intriguing conversation for people.
I love that he caught that big ball back in like 2001 or something like that. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
I remember because Doherty talked about that, and so I do remember him. And I always said what's up to him when he was on campus. So
great dude.
Definitely. If you can connect us, that'd be great. You can stay on after the outro, and then I'll just kind of you'll see the outro, and then the show will be over, but we can stay on for a hot
Okay.
second.
Well, I want to say thank you for having
Yep.
me, Chris, first and foremost. And, I definitely got a lot out of the conversation. I appreciate you and everything you're doing with your podcast, your coaching career, being an entrepreneur and all your ventures and stuff like that. Very inspirational there. And it's definitely an honor to be on here and kind of share my perspective. So I hope everyone got something out of it.
No, likewise, man. I'm very proud of you and the man that you've become. I've seen you as a young 6'2", 130 pounds.
Yeah,
We'll give you 140 if you're going to give Andre Johnson 6'3".
All right.
But if you share any of your socials or where everybody can find Beyond Sports and whatnot.
For sure. So my socials are call, like a phone call, CALL_IN_Johnson. And that's pretty much across all social media platforms. So you can find me on Twitter.
Collin Johnson, baby. Collin Johnson.
Yeah, that's right. Call me in. A little play on words there. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, you name it. Also on LinkedIn. That's not as cool, but if you want to check me out there, go ahead. And then Beyond Sports is something also I touched on. I'm very passionate about it. So if you're a student athlete or you have any student athletes within your community that need some mentorship or some support, whether it's their post-playing days, career transition, or academic test prep to help get into colleges and earn scholarships that route, or just a conversation on the next steps or whatever that may be, Beyond Sports, we're the one-stop shop for you guys. So you can visit that at www.beyond-sports.com. And you could also just DM me on social media, and I could guide you to where you need to go that way. But so looking forward to hearing from you guys.
Make sure you look up Beyond Sports. This is Beyond the Buckets. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.